Happy happy Tuesday. In 5 days I'll have 2 months left until 2 years. Or I could just say 65 days. Or whatever. One of those 65 days and I'll have 2 years. Just call it that, right? 2 months, 5 days. It's a huge milestone for me. It's not an actual milestone, but it's huge. And I'm pulling handles, getting everything going in terms of like locking up the store. And I just started thinking, when I go to a place in my head, see, when I'm pulling handles, I tend to leave my phone on my table now. And I just go out and it's just me in my head. Right? And that's a time for reflection, because that's a good 30 minutes. I'm not driving, I'm just reflecting. And I can go to bad places in that silence. But those are important places to go to, not the bad places, just the silence, walking and just thinking. And the reason I say that is I'm not doing anything. I'm just mindless checking door handles. And it's real easy to like be in my head and, the hamster wheel spinning and go to the gym or start writing or, any of that. Even this, these videos. It's real easy to do that, to distract myself from what's going on in my head. The real work happens when that's going on. When I'm just like the quiet time where I'm thinking. And usually, if I feel some turmoil or some confusion or anything, usually what's going on is doubt. That doubt is a killer. It's an absolute killer. And all these good things can be happening, right? Like all of these things, like take a relationship for instance. I'm in a relationship that I consider a good one. It's healthy. There's communication. There's all this stuff, and even that, it's even the clear communication, even the evidence shows that everything is good, but there could be this downtime of no communication, and I can be like, well, I can go to a place, what I want to talk about is like, and I didn't really quite do this, but I thought about it, and then I wanted to really just pinpoint that thought process. And I don't know if anybody comes across this, if they do this, so I wanted to share about this. It's that place we go to where, like, let's say you're with somebody and they decide to go hang out with somebody, right? And then the first thought that pops in your head or my head is like, well, if they mess around, well, this isn't going to work out. Or if they lied to me, or this isn't going to work. Or all of those ifs that are negative, right? And when it comes to trust, right? Like, so for me, that's a defense mechanism. It's what I do to protect myself just in case something bad happens. Bad in terms of my perspective of bad in it, at the time. And see, when we do the if, when I do that if, that is that exact moment that I'm losing trust. And it can feel harmless. It can feel harmless. We're just thinking. We're we're playing it out in our head. But it's that story that creates that small grain of doubt that turns bigger and bigger. Then all of a sudden, I'm thinking about it a lot longer than I need to be. The bottom line is like, when I say, well, if, and it's anything other than, well, just the if itself is that door that we open up, that door called doubt. And I want to pray, and so I'll start praying there, that doesn't matter. And what do I mean by that? That doesn't matter. Like, if I can go to the if, then I've already stopped trusting. And it's not even about the person, although it is. It's about what got me there. If I believe that God is at work, when I believe that God is at work, I'm trusting. Just like I've shared in the past about like turning on your car and heading to work. No check engine lights, your car's got low miles and you're on the way. You just trust that it's working. There's no fear. You're not white knuckling that. But see, I can white knuckle relationships through my fears, starting with the word if. Like, if they do this, then it's not going to work out. That's a simple one, which is so destructive. It's so destructive. Even if it does work out, it's just staying in the moment, looking up and saying, I trust that everything is working out the way it's going to work out. And not being on one side or the other, but straight in the middle. And that's a hard practice. I'm a lot better than I was. But I catch myself doing that. A lot. You know, like I catch myself. And really it comes down to why. Why? You know, like there's those stories of people that like, they were so confident, everything worked out, and then they were just like caught off guard. They weren't expecting it. So there's that fear that we don't want to be the one caught off guard. So we put up these weird defenses that are all started with the word if. And being able to acknowledge that I do that will help me stop doing it. I want a good, healthy relationship, so I'll keep changing. Because that's what it requires. It requires this constant change that's consistent. Changing the negativity that's consistent. As consistent as me stepping up the way I have been. I don't, when it comes to like stepping up to the plate, there's no ifs. If my partner or my kids or somebody close to me that I care about is in need, I step up. I don't question it. I just do it. I want that level of trust in the unknown. I want recovery to be a way of life. And through recovery, I change the way I live. And the only way I'm going to change the way I live is by changing the way I think. Because when I start claiming, sorry, that was some word shit. When I start in the thought processes, I have to dig deep enough to understand why if popped in my head. If pops in my head because of where I value myself. You know, I'm doing all this research on like fucking stoicism, which is a great way to live on one side of my life. Detachment is one of the healthiest things we can do when we feel attached to something. And attachment is coming from a place of need, not a place of love. We come with a place of love when we're coming from abundance. That confidence coming from abundance doesn't have if attached to it, but that attachment does. I can take it as far back as like, if it's ever happened to me before, it probably has a lot to do with the ifs and the maybes, and they probably spiraled and turned into some really bad behaviors. And so I'll look at a previous situation, and what I'll do is I'll only take bits and pieces of it that I remember and try to take it and bring it into whatever I'm struggling with now. Oh yeah, that happened to me before. Well, where was I and what was I doing that led up to that? Because all things, there's just a bunch of small decisions that lead up to these big decisions that ultimately turn into, the failures or, whatever. And I don't look at those. I don't look at when the ifs started back then in that situation, and then all of a sudden, I started playing out a story in my head, and then all of a sudden I didn't want to stay quiet, so I shared what that story sounded like, and then they were like, well, wait, you don't trust me? And they were doing nothing. Then all of a sudden they got to be on guard, and now we're both walking on eggshells, and nobody wants to live that way. So you do that over a period of time, and then all of a sudden, it's just, now it's hard to be in the same room with somebody, and you're like, fuck, man, I remember when it was hard to be in the same room with somebody. Well, what happened? And I can't go back to that. So I have to change currently. And so those ifs are what I need to change. You know what I mean? Not try to protect myself with like, well, okay, well then it's not going to work out. And, there's a million other fish in the sea. What the fuck? And by doing that, all I'm doing is already deading something that didn't even start, but with a if. Right? Where do I value myself? Because if I value myself high enough, then it's that off-guarded situation I was just talking about, where the person is off guard. They're like, what the hell? But they weren't like fearful and worried and all that. Other shit happened. But it's that deading the ifs. That's the ick. And so learning to process that is what I need to start focusing on. And I think that's, as I continue these different small seasons of my life moving forward, that's something that I needed to address, because I was thinking about it and I was like, okay, so I'm at a place where I don't want to be inside my head, and so how do I change that? Well, maybe first acknowledge it, so I can then find a way to take ownership of it, because it's me, it's in my head, it's my shit, and that's really where I need to be. And so I'm going to focus more on when the if kicks in, where am I at with myself? I get back on my side of the street, right? Because that's where I'm not. And just ask myself, where am I valuing myself right now? What do I bring to the table? Right? Maybe I'm doing all these things that I feel is right. How am I doing them? But where do I value myself? Am I coming from a place of abundance and bringing love? Or am I coming from a place of attachment and needing validation and needing, right? And that's where I have to ask myself, where do you value yourself? Because if I value myself high enough, then I'm not there at the ifs. And then I can focus on whatever task is at hand. Even if it's a simple task as checking door handles before we leave. I got in the way of doing a simple task. And maybe that was because that was the moment that I had a little bit of a break to where I could do that. No phone, no distraction from other salespeople, no CRM, none of that. Just me and myself walking here and then thinking about stuff. And learning. I'm learning about myself. And And so this is just a check-in. I wanted to call myself out here as I do in this, because I feel like the ifs are a dangerous place to be, especially if I continue the sentence. Shutting it down like, no. It's a perfectly human thing to do, is to have that happen. But if I can shut it down and say, no, we're not going to play that out. All we're going to do is we're creating a story that we don't need to be creating. And we is me and myself. Because when I create that story, I'm letting something else kick in. And it's like waiting for that. It's waiting for that moment to where it could be like, yeah. And what about it? What if this happens? Oh, and what if it's bullshit and you've been lied to this whole time? And you're like, well, then you got to answer for all these things you don't need an answer for, right? And then all of a sudden, all these worries kick in. You start thinking about other times or other situations. You're like, well, wait, was that real? Was this real? And then all of a sudden, your perception of reality is not even there. And it's about staying in the moment. So my perception of reality is my evidence and all that. And that way I can be that person for whoever. Now when I step up, I'm stepping up the right way, properly. Not for anything in return. Not for any type of validation. It doesn't have to be a thing. It can be just validation. And all I need is validation from God. Like if I really need validation, I just have to look up and say, am I good enough? And God already said yes. And I know that. That's all the validation I need. The rest will work out.